Hi, I'm Orla, and today I'm going to be talking about my writing updates. So, basically, I have been writing a lot of things this year. I've mainly been focusing on my next novel, which is set in the 1950s in the US and is centered around deinstitutionalization during that time period. But a lot of it is also about different themes and issues. So, with that project, I have almost finished the first draft, which I'm very happy about, obviously, but I'm not finished yet. So, I'm on the final part of the novel, but I've got a few things I need to structure properly before I start writing. I usually plan my story lines that much. I just start writing whatever I want to write, and then I sort of think about what needs to happen in the next 10 or so chapters. But I only ever really properly outline the plot of my novel when I have writer's block or there's some sort of issue in the story, like a plot hole that might affect the structure of the novel, I guess. So I don't like planning out too much. I think it makes me overthink my writing and just affects the flow of my writing. So I don't usually do it, or I only do it near the end where I'm trying to think of what I need to finish up in the story and what needs to happen before the story ends. So I don't usually do it that much, but obviously, right now I need to figure out some parts of the story in order to finish the first draft. Just sort of been working away with that. I've also been quite busy with assessments that I have and things, so I've not been able to put my full attention on it, but I started working on this 2 months ago, I think, and I'd only written about 10 chapters, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to turn it into a novel, and now I'm sort of near the end of writing the first draft, so honestly, I'm really happy with the work that I've put in, but I really want to finish the first draft, so I can move on with getting feedback and seeing what I need to do for the second draft. Although I do leave usually a bit of a gap between writing the first draft and the second draft. I always think it's important to have some time away from that novel before you start working on it again. But I really want to publish it next year or the year after. So I'm not going to take too long from the first draft to the second draft, probably a few months maximum, maybe even just a month, just so I can make sure I'm on schedule. But I've really been enjoying writing the novel. I don't want to say too much about the plot at the moment, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of research that I've been putting into it because deinstitutionalization is very complicated and there's a lot of things that I didn't know about deinstitutionalization. Deinstitutionalization did happen in the UK, but as far as I'm aware, it was quite different to the deinstitutionalization in the US. Obviously, I've been focusing my research into the US, so I don't know much about the UK, but I do know that there is quite a difference in, I think, the reasons for it happening and just the magnitude. So I've really just been focusing on the US, obviously. So it's been really interesting learning about deinstitutionalization in a different country and also just how much of an impact it had during that time period specifically, and the impact it had for these patients, and especially patients that were abused during their time in institutes and hospitals, um, after and sort of during deinstitutionalization. There was a lot of people speaking out about their experiences and it left a lot of food for thought about the way we treat people with mental health issues. There's also a lot about the racism, obviously, during that time, about how Black patients were treated very differently from white patients, obviously due to segregation. There was mainly white hospitals and Black mental hospitals. But yeah, the difference between care is very jarring. There's a lot of, honestly, kind of terrifying information about how Black people and people of different races were treated so differently from white patients purely based on racist ideology that had no substance in the scientific world, but because of the racism during that time, it was believed, which is something I really want to look into more, because I'm not fully aware of everything. I know the, I guess, important um, pieces of information around that, but I would love to go deeper into it because it is a very important subject. And I won't lie, most of my characters in this novel are white, so I do sort of want to bring in that discussion in my novel about, the difference in care. But since I'm still researching into it, I don't really want to bring that into my novel in any way at this moment in time. But I think for the second draft, I'm going to bring in a lot more discussion on, yeah, just the racism in the medical field during that time. Another thing that's actually not novel based is I have started a Substack. I've not actually announced it, I don't think. So, this is my first time properly bringing it up. But yeah, I have a Substack. I talk about kind of whatever's on my mind. I talk about plants. I talk about history quite a bit, as you can imagine. And yeah, I talk about a lot of things. Some are personal essays, but most of it is sort of my research for my novels or just my research into things specifically. Some of it's about what I'm reading or topics I want to talk about. For example, one of the Substack posts I did was on the defeminization of women in the military, which was honestly a very interesting topic that I've always wanted to discuss, but I hadn't really had the time to fully look into it. But due to the novel I have been reading, which is The Unwomanly Face of War by Svetlana Alexievich, I have honestly learned so much more about how war affects women specifically and sort of historically how female soldiers have been treated, which, yeah, is just a very interesting topic, at least to me. So, if you like anything history, anything plant related, please consider checking it out. I've really put a lot of effort into it, and honestly, if you like what I do here on this channel, I feel like you'll like it. So, no pressure, but if you're interested in topics like that, please go check out. I have also written a few chapters of a different project I've been working on. It has been a bit more of a difficult write for me, I guess. I clearly like difficult topics to talk about and, serious issues because of what I write. But this project has been the most difficult for me to write. Um, learning about deinstitutionalization and, some of the abuse and discrimination that these patients faced was, utterly disgusting. But there's something about this other project that I'm working on that I really do just struggle with. I think a lot of it is probably based on my personal experiences and, you know, how difficult of a topic I find it, but I'm still trying to write it. the best I can because it is something very important, um, and something I want to talk about because I had no clue that it had happened until I started researching um, into it after I heard something about it. Um, it's another historical fiction, but it's a historical fiction, but it's set in the 90s for the most part. So, like the 90s and early 2000s. So, to me, that doesn't feel historical. And yet again, it's sort of another medical story to a certain extent, and kind of based around malpractice too. So, it seems to be a common theme for what I'm writing, but I do also write a lot of, military and war based historical fiction. I've been working on a few projects on the side, but I think after hopefully publishing the first novel I was talking about, I will then in the future publish a more war inspired novel because that is kind of my main subject that I like to talk about. I'm very big on military history, but I do like to obviously write about other things in history. But yeah, just this project has been very difficult for me to write. I think it's possibly just something that, I've written a few chapters, but not near as much as the other project I was talking about. And I just think that maybe it's just something that I'm not fully comfortable writing with yet. I think because it's such a serious topic, I'm just maybe not fully ready to explore it in the ways that I need to. Um, I think it's a topic that I quite often like to shy away from, so I'm really just trying to get over that and focus on it. But I'm kind of aware that I'm not able to give it my full attention at this point in time, so that's why I've been working on the other project. I don't think I actually mentioned the name of the first project is A Cage of Needles. It's subject to change, but I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going to keep it as. So, yeah, I've just been putting all my attention on Cage of Needles and kind of shying away from this project until I know I'm fully able to, talk about the issues in the novel. Um, and also because um, I love to write multiple projects at the same time, but I try and focus my attention on the one that I plan on, going into different drafts with. I'm trying to think of what else I've been writing. I've also been sort of doing some preparation for a different novel. I know so many novels, but a different novel which is very different from, the sort of more historical things I like to write about. It is a sci fi, um, and it follows two girls from very different lives. One is from like a very wealthy background, and her father runs an organization that helps with running the galaxy, where the other character, she is very rebellious and at the start of the novel is actually a prisoner. She's very against this organization and she's honestly kind of considered a war criminal in their eyes. So it's something I've been working on for a few years actually, but not fully. I've sort of had this idea for a while, and I've written little notes of dialogue and things, but now I'm sort of compiling it all together in order to plot out the novels. Like I said, I don't usually outline my novels or, plot them out before writing them, but this would be a series if all goes well. So I need to, obviously know what happens in the first book and the second and sort of make sure that the overall plot throughout these books adds up and makes sense and, you know, doesn't feel like it's being dragged on. So, um, I've been doing some work on that, but obviously I've been trying my hardest not to try and write it. I've been very inspired, but if I feel like writing, I write, but I don't want to get too distracted. I know I need to think it through a lot more. And also, like I said, I'm focusing on A Cage of Needles, so as much as I love to write other projects, I don't need the distraction. Also, I wanted to mention a while back, I talked about how I had written a play, which is very much still there, but I am not really sure what I'm going to do with it. I think I will publish it or do something with it next year, but I'm not entirely sure if I need to do another draft or not. I'm fairly happy with it, but I think I might do a third draft just to make sure and get, some people to read it. So I have more editing to do maybe, and just make sure that the plot points and the characters are really strong before I put that work out into the world. Um, just because it's my first play that I've ever written, and I just want to make sure that there's no issues with it, I guess, or, that it's just fully developed before, I put it out to the world for everyone to read or possibly perform. So that is very much still there. I just don't know if I need to do a bit more work before I put it out or what I'm going to do with it, to be honest. But I will be publishing it at some point. I'm thinking next year because it'll definitely be done by next year, but I might in the next few months get some people to read it and give me feedback just to make sure that I'm fully happy with it. So that is all my writing updates. I hope you enjoyed listening to me yap, and I will see you in the next one.